She pulled the thorn from a dying wolf, never knowing she freed the exiled king bound in beast form. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. Emily Hawke, a simple farm girl, lived in the peaceful village of Redwood. Her days were filled with tending to crops, caring for animals, and keeping the hearth warm. She had never imagined that one fateful day would change her life forever. It all began when she ventured into the dense woods near her village, a place she had been warned about since childhood. The woods were rumored to be enchanted, full of secrets and hidden dangers. But that morning, a sense of curiosity tugged at her heart, and she decided to explore deeper than ever before. As Emily walked through the thick trees, a strange sound caught her attention, soft and pained, almost like a low growl mixed with a whimper. She hesitated for a moment, but then her compassion took over. Following the noise, she stumbled upon a sight that would haunt her dreams. A large wolf lay on the ground, its body covered in dirt and blood, with a thorn deeply embedded in its side. The creature's breath was shallow, and its eyes were clouded with pain. Without a second thought, Emily knelt beside the beast, her heart racing in her chest. She knew nothing of the world of magic or curses, only that she couldn't leave the poor creature to suffer. Gently, she placed her hands on the thorn and, with a quick pull, removed it from the wolf's side. The wolf let out a soft growl, its body trembling, before it collapsed completely. For a moment, Emily feared she had made a grave mistake, but as she looked into the wolf's eyes, she saw something far beyond the animal. There was intelligence there, something almost royal. Confused, Emily took a step back, unsure of what to do. That's when the wolf's form began to change before her very eyes. The fur receded, replaced by human skin, and the powerful, yet injured beast slowly transformed into a man. His features were rugged, yet regal, his hair wild and untamed, like that of a king who had seen both triumph and ruin. Emily gasped, stumbling backward in shock. The man, no, the king, opened his eyes, which were now an intense shade of blue, and looked directly at her. He was no longer the wolf she had seen only moments ago, yet she could still feel the power emanating from him. You. His voice was rough, filled with pain, but there was a deep sense of gratitude in his gaze. You freed me. Emily had no idea what was happening. She had only wanted to help the animal, not knowing that her simple act of kindness had set free a man who had been trapped in the form of a beast for far too long. A beast whose name was King Alaric, once ruler of a powerful kingdom now lost to time. Little did Emily know, she had just unwittingly opened the door to a world filled with secrets, dangers, and a destiny she was not yet ready to face. Emily stood frozen, her heart pounding in her chest. She had seen many things in her life, beautiful sunsets, wild animals in the fields, and the peaceful stillness of the village at night, but nothing compared to the surreal sight in front of her. The wolf, now fully transformed into a man, stood up slowly, his body still trembling with exhaustion. His clothes were torn, and his posture spoke of someone who had endured years of hardship. His gaze was intense, as if searching for something, or perhaps someone. Who are you? Emily's voice came out barely above a whisper, still in shock from the strange turn of events. The man, no, the king, slowly took a step toward her, his eyes never leaving hers. I am King Alaric, he said, his voice deep and commanding, though still rough from his ordeal. You have freed me from my curse. Emily's mind raced. She couldn't make sense of what he was saying. A curse? King? What was he talking about? I didn't mean to, she stammered, unsure of how to respond. I only wanted to help. The king looked at her with a mix of gratitude and sorrow. Your kindness has undone what centuries of torment could not, he said. But you do not yet understand the weight of what you've done. Emily's confusion deepened, but she could see the sincerity in his eyes. She couldn't deny the gravity of the moment. There was something about him, something ancient, yet powerful, that pulled at her. I don't know what to do, she admitted, her voice trembling. I don't understand any of this. King Alaric took another step closer, his expression softening. You do not have to understand everything right now, Emily. But you must know this. You have awakened a power that has been dormant for far too long. A power that was meant to restore what was lost. Emily felt her breath catch in her throat. The air around them seemed to grow heavier, as if the world itself was holding its breath. She glanced around, her mind still struggling to grasp the enormity of what was happening. What do you mean? She asked, her voice barely audible. Alaric's gaze grew distant, as if he were lost in memories. My kingdom was once great, he began, but it was brought to ruin by betrayal and dark forces. I was cursed, turned into this beast, and cast away. Now, after all these years, the curse is broken, but the war that destroyed my people, it still rages on. Emily's heart ached as she listened. She had heard rumors of the old kings and lost kingdoms, tales passed down by the elders. But she never imagined she would be part of such a story. What can I do? She asked, her voice small but filled with a determination she hadn't known she possessed. Alaric's eyes softened, and for the first time since his transformation, he smiled. A sad, weary smile. There is much to be done, but first, you must decide if you are willing to help me. For the path ahead will not be easy, and the world you know will never be the same. Emily swallowed hard, her mind racing. She had never asked for any of this, but deep inside, she felt something stirring, something she couldn't ignore. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain. Her life had changed forever, and whatever this journey was, she would see it through to the end. Emily stood in stunned silence as King Alaric's words echoed in her mind. A kingdom destroyed, a curse lifted, and a man who had been trapped in the form of a wolf for centuries. She could hardly wrap her mind around it. Yet, as she looked at him, standing before her with the weight of 1,000 lifetimes in his eyes, she realized that her life had been irrevocably changed. The simple farm girl from Redwood was now part of a story far greater than anything she had ever imagined. What do you need me to do? Emily finally asked, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of thoughts in her head. Alaric's gaze softened, and he took a step closer to her. You have already done more than I could have hoped, he said, his voice low and sincere. But the journey ahead will require more than just compassion. You must learn to trust in the unknown and, most importantly, in yourself. Emily's heart raced. She had never been one to think of herself as a hero, never imagined she would be called to such a grand purpose. She was just a girl from a small village, with nothing but a kind heart and a willingness to help. Yet here she was, standing beside a man who had once ruled a kingdom, about to embark on a journey that could change the fate of the world. But I don't know anything about kingdoms or wars or curses, Emily said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. How can I help you? Alaric studied her for a long moment, as though measuring her every word. The greatest strength you possess is your ability to see the truth, he said finally. You did not hesitate to help me when you saw my pain. You acted out of kindness, without concern for what it might cost you. That is something rare, something that cannot be taught. Emily didn't know what to say. She had never thought of herself as particularly brave or wise. She had simply acted on instinct, on the compassion she had always carried with her. But now, as Alaric spoke to her, she felt something stirring within her, a sense of purpose, a deep knowing that she had been chosen for something greater. Where do we go from here? She asked, a new resolve beginning to form in her heart. Alaric's expression grew serious, his eyes hardening as he looked into the distance. There is much to be done, he said, his tone firm. We must find those who can help me reclaim what was lost. There are others, allies who still remember the old days. They will know what to do. Emily nodded, a sense of determination growing within her. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she couldn't turn back now. The man before her was no longer just a stranger. He was a king, a ruler who had been cast down, and she was the one who had unknowingly set him free. And though she had no idea what trials lay ahead, she was ready to face them. Together, they would uncover the secrets of the past, confront the darkness that still lingered, and perhaps, just perhaps, restore what had been lost to the winds of time. Let's begin then, Emily said, her voice steady with newfound strength. Alaric gave a small, approving nod. Very well, he replied. But remember, this journey will test you in ways you cannot yet understand. Stay true to yourself, Emily, and trust in your heart. Only then will you be able to face the challenges that await. And with that, they set off together, leaving behind the safety of the forest and stepping into the unknown, their fates forever intertwined in a journey that would change the world. The forest canopy thinned as Emily and King Alaric moved deeper into the quiet stretch of woodland, the afternoon light filtering through branches in soft golden beams. The air carried the scent of damp moss and pine sap, and each distant bird call echoed with an unsettling clarity, as if the world itself were still adjusting to the return of a king long lost. Emily kept a few steps behind Alaric, watching the way he moved. His stride was steady now, no longer weakened by the transformation, yet there was a carefulness to him, as though he feared the ground might shift beneath his feet at any moment. "Do you remember this place?" she asked gently. Alaric paused, his hand brushing the bark of an old cedar tree. "I remember the world before it changed," he said quietly. "Before the curse. Before everything was taken." Emily sensed the ache woven through his words, an echo of centuries spent trapped in silence inside the body of a creature that could not speak. She wondered how many thoughts he had kept locked away, how many memories had gone unshared. They reached a small clearing where a fallen log stretched across a patch of soft earth. Sunlight glinted off tiny droplets of moisture clinging to the grass, creating a faint shimmering glow. Alaric slowed, then sank onto the log with a weary exhale. Emily hesitated before taking a seat beside him. She could feel the faint warmth radiating off him, oddly comforting despite the strangeness of the situation. For several moments, neither spoke. The forest's gentle hum filled the silence, the rustle of leaves, the rhythmic chirping of insects, the distant rush of a stream. It was a rare stillness, something fragile and delicate, as though the world were inviting them to breathe. "I owe you more than you realize," Alaric said at last, his voice softer than she had heard it before. Emily looked down at her hands. "I only did what felt right," she replied. "Anyone would have tried to help." He turned to her, a faint crease forming between his brows. "No," he said. "Very few would have helped a dying wolf they did not understand. Even fewer would have touched a creature cursed by ancient magic. You acted without fear." Emily did not feel fearless. If anything, her heart had been pounding so loudly earlier that she thought it might burst from her chest. But hearing him say it now stirred something deep within her, a quiet sense that maybe she was stronger than she ever allowed herself to believe. "What was it like?" she asked gently. "Being trapped like that." Alaric's gaze drifted to the treetops as though searching for the right words. "Imagine being awake but unseen," he said. "Feeling time stretch endlessly while the world moves on without you. I could observe. I could feel pain, fear, hunger, but I could not speak, could not explain, could not ask for mercy." Emily's breath caught. She imagined him lying wounded somewhere, year after year, unable to call for help. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I did not know." "How could you?" he replied. "And yet your kindness reached me even in that form. You saw a suffering creature and chose compassion over caution." She felt her cheeks warm. "I just could not walk away." Alaric studied her for a moment, the intensity of his blue eyes softened now by something she could not quite name. "That alone," he murmured, "makes you different from the world I once knew." The wind shifted, carrying a faint chill. Emily hugged her arms lightly around herself, but before she could adjust her posture, Alaric removed the cloak from his shoulders and settled it gently around her. The fabric held a faint warmth, tinged with the earthy scent of the forest. Emily's breath hitched at the gesture, simple, wordless, and unexpectedly tender. "You do not have to. You helped me," he said. "Allow me this much." The silence that followed felt different from the earlier one. Softer, closer. A moment suspended between two people who should have been strangers, yet now sat side by side in a clearing touched by fading sunlight. Emily stared at the shimmering dust motes floating lazily in the air, her heartbeat settling into a calm, steady rhythm. For the first time since that morning, she felt the weight of fear lift, replaced by something quiet and warm. It was the beginning of understanding. Two lives brushing against each other, recognizing, somehow, a shared thread neither could yet see but both already felt. The sun had dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the clearing as Emily and Alaric continued their quiet conversation. The warmth of the cloak wrapped around her felt comforting, though the growing chill in the air reminded her that the world around them was never far from danger. Alaric's gaze lingered on the horizon, his expression thoughtful. Emily followed his gaze, wondering what thoughts lingered behind those intense blue eyes. "You've lived through so much," she said quietly. "How do you carry all of it?" Alaric turned to her, his face softening. "In the beginning, it was unbearable," he admitted. "Every day, every hour felt like an eternity. But over time, the pain becomes something else. A shadow, ever present, but no longer consuming." He paused, his fingers brushing the edge of the cloak. "I learned to endure, to wait, to watch the world move on without me." Emily swallowed, her chest tight with a mixture of sorrow and awe. She had only known Alaric for a short time, but she could feel the depth of his past, the weight he carried. It was strange, she thought, how quickly a single act of kindness could bind two lives together. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "You're free, but there's so much more to this curse than just your transformation." Alaric's eyes flickered with something unreadable. "The curse is only part of the story," he said. "It's true that my form has been broken, but the world I once knew is lost. And those who are responsible for my downfall still exist. They've waited for my return, and I fear they will not be pleased." Emily shuddered slightly, her grip tightening on the cloak. "So what do we do?" Alaric looked at her, his expression hardening. "We fight, but not yet. First, I must gather what remains of my people, those who might still stand with me. Then, we will confront those who seek to keep us broken." He paused, his voice lowering. "And you, Emily, you have a role to play in this, whether you know it or not." Her heart skipped a beat, and she glanced at him in surprise. "Me? But I'm nobody. I don't know anything about kingdoms or wars." Alaric's gaze softened, his voice taking on a quieter, almost tender tone. "You are far more than you realize. Your kindness has already changed the course of my fate. What you don't understand yet is that there is power in the choices you make. The path ahead is uncertain, but your presence in this journey is no accident." Emily's mind raced, the weight of his words settling over her like a fog. She had never thought of herself as someone important, yet here she was, standing beside a king who had been trapped for centuries, now free and about to face an uncertain future. Her chest tightened with a mix of fear and determination. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I know I can't walk away." Alaric nodded, his gaze steady. "That is all anyone needs to begin. The rest will follow." They sat in silence for a long time, the sounds of the forest their only companions. As the sun sank lower and the stars began to prick the sky, Emily felt a sense of resolve settle within her. She had no idea what the future would bring, but she knew she would face it alongside Alaric. Together, they would uncover the secrets of his past, confront the darkness ahead, and perhaps even restore a kingdom lost to time. As the night stretched on, she felt a stirring within her, a quiet strength, a bond that was beginning to form, even in the midst of uncertainty. And for the first time, she felt a glimmer of hope for what lay ahead. The following days passed in a quiet rhythm, one that neither Emily nor Alaric had expected. The forest grew denser around them as they traveled deeper into the land, the path ahead unclear but guided by Alaric's memories. They did not speak much, but there was an unspoken understanding between them. Each footstep forward carried them further from the life Emily had known, and closer to the unknown world Alaric had left behind. Alaric, though free of the curse that had bound him, remained distant, his eyes often lost in thought, as though he were piecing together fragments of a broken puzzle. Emily could not blame him. After centuries of silence, how could one know where to begin again? Yet, with each passing day, she saw the flickers of the king he had once been, his regal bearing, the fire in his eyes when he spoke of reclaiming what was lost. They had begun to gather the few loyal supporters still remaining, those who had not forgotten the old kingdom, and who now looked to Alaric as their hope for the future. Emily watched as he spoke with them, his voice steady, though the weight of responsibility hung heavily on his shoulders. He had been a ruler once, she realized, and the world he sought to reclaim was more than just a kingdom, it was his legacy. And he had not come back alone. He had returned with a purpose, one that would shape not only his own fate, but the fate of those who chose to stand by him. How do you do it? Emily asked one evening, as they sat by a campfire, the night sky above them filled with stars. How do you keep going when everything you knew is gone? Alaric looked into the flames, the orange glow casting shadows across his face. In the beginning, I didn't, he said quietly. I didn't want to. But the curse taught me something. It taught me to survive. And I learned, in time, that survival was not enough. It wasn't until I thought I had nothing left to lose that I found the strength to fight for something more. Emily nodded slowly, understanding his words more than she had expected. She had never faced the kind of hardship Alaric had, but there were moments when she had felt the weight of her own battles, times when she had wanted to give up, to leave behind everything that had held her in place. But just like him, she had found a way to keep moving forward. The fire crackled between them, the silence stretching out as Alaric's words settled in the air. You don't have to do this alone, Emily said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Alaric turned to her, his expression softening in the firelight. I know, he replied, his voice carrying a quiet sincerity. And I don't intend to. They sat in the silence of the night, the flickering light of the campfire reflecting in their eyes, each of them lost in their own thoughts, but bound together by something unspoken. Emily had not expected to find herself in this place, not in 1,000 years. She had never thought of herself as part of something bigger, never imagined she would be caught in the crossfire of ancient kingdoms and broken curses. Yet here she was, standing beside a king who had lost everything, and together, they were going to try to rebuild what had been broken. The thought was both overwhelming and oddly comforting. For the first time in what felt like forever, Emily allowed herself to believe in the possibility of something greater, something that could come from the ashes of a world long lost. Alaric had a plan, a purpose, and she was part of it. The weight of that thought was heavy, but it was a weight she was willing to bear. As the fire died down to embers, Emily felt a quiet resolve settle within her. The journey ahead would not be easy, but she was no longer alone in it. They would face whatever came next, together. The next few days passed with a quiet urgency, as if the world around them was holding its breath. Alaric had begun to gather those who had once served him, loyalists, remnants of his kingdom who had hidden in the shadows, waiting for the day he would return. Emily watched him as he spoke to them, his voice carrying the weight of both a king and a man who had been lost to time. There was a fire in his eyes, a glimmer of the ruler he had once been, but it was tempered with something else, an uncertainty, as though he were still unsure of his place in this new world. They had traveled far from the clearing where they had first spoken of the past. Each step took them deeper into lands that were unfamiliar to both of them. Emily had learned that the world outside her village was vast, filled with ruins of forgotten civilizations and landscapes that seemed to change with every passing day. Yet there was something about the journey that felt right, something that told her she was where she was meant to be. One evening, as they set up camp by a small stream, Emily watched Alaric work, his movements precise and deliberate as he surveyed their surroundings. The campfire crackled beside them, the warmth of the flames a welcome contrast to the chill in the air. She had noticed that he often became lost in thought, his gaze distant, as if searching for something just out of reach. Are you all right? She asked, breaking the silence. Alaric turned to her, his expression softening. Just thinking, he said, of what we left behind. Emily nodded, understanding without needing an explanation. She knew that the weight of his past would always be with him, but she also knew that the future, whatever it held, was still theirs to shape. She shifted closer to the fire, feeling the warmth seep into her bones. Do you think it's possible to rebuild what was lost? She asked, her voice quiet. Alaric looked into the flames, his eyes flickering with the light. I don't know, he replied honestly. The world we knew is gone, and it's hard to imagine returning to something that no longer exists. But I believe that we can start again. We can find new ways to build, to forge a future. His words held a quiet conviction, but Emily could sense the struggle behind them. He had lost everything, his kingdom, his people, his identity, and yet he still believed in the possibility of renewal. It was something she admired, even if she didn't fully understand it. What about you? Alaric asked, his voice gentle. Do you believe in that? Emily considered his question carefully. She had always thought of herself as someone who accepted things as they were, never questioning the world around her. But now, as she sat beside a king who had been broken and reborn, she found herself wondering about the future. "I want to believe," she said slowly. "I want to believe that we can make something better, even after everything that's happened." Alaric studied her for a long moment, and then he gave a small nod. "That's all we can do," he said. "Believe, and then take the first step." They sat in silence, the sound of the stream flowing gently beside them, the fire crackling in the night. Emily's heart felt lighter, the weight of the journey ahead still heavy, but no longer as overwhelming. She wasn't sure where the path would lead, but she knew that for the first time in a long while, she was ready to face it. Together, they would rebuild, not just a kingdom, but a future. And with that, the promise of something new, something hopeful, began to take root in her heart. As the days stretched on, their small group grew, each person adding a new layer of hope, of strength. Alaric's plan was taking shape, slowly but surely. They traveled through villages that had long been abandoned, ruins of once great cities where only the echoes of time remained. Every place they passed felt like a reminder of what had been lost, but Alaric did not let that deter him. He walked with purpose, as if every step was a declaration that he would rebuild what had been shattered. Emily kept pace beside him, still learning, still watching, but now with a sense of resolve that she hadn't known before. She had always been content with the quiet life she had led, with the small world she had known, but now, surrounded by the remnants of a forgotten kingdom, she felt something stir within her, a desire to be part of something greater. One evening, as they set up camp by the remains of an old stone tower, Emily found herself lost in thought, staring into the fire as the flames danced in the night. Alaric was speaking with one of the men they had met along the way, a former soldier who had sworn loyalty to him years ago. She listened absently, her mind racing. She had always thought of herself as a simple farm girl, someone who would never find herself in a story like this. But here she was, caught up in a world of kings and curses, of warriors and forgotten dreams. She had become a part of something that was much bigger than she could have ever imagined. She could still hear Alaric's voice, steady and sure as he spoke of plans for the future. It wasn't just about reclaiming a throne. It was about giving hope to people who had lost everything, about restoring a world that had been broken. Emily didn't know if she believed in the old magic that Alaric spoke of, but she did believe in him, and she believed in the journey they were on together. "What's on your mind?" Alaric's voice cut through her thoughts, warm and familiar. She looked up to find him standing beside her, his expression softening as he met her gaze. She hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to put her feelings into words. "I was just thinking about everything," she said quietly. "How far we've come. How much has changed." Alaric nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "The world is different now," he said, his voice low. "But that doesn't mean we can't rebuild. We can't restore what's been lost." Emily smiled softly, a flicker of understanding passing between them. She hadn't realized it before, but there was something in the way Alaric spoke, in the way he carried himself. It was as if he truly believed they could change the world. And for the first time, Emily found herself believing it too. The fire crackled as the night deepened, the stars above twinkling like silent witnesses to the promises that were being made beneath their vast expanse. They were far from the life they had known, but as the warmth of the campfire wrapped around them, Emily felt the weight of uncertainty lift, replaced by something more powerful, hope. Hope that perhaps they could rebuild, not just the kingdom Alaric had lost, but something new, something that would endure. Together, they sat in silence, side by side, knowing that the journey ahead would be long and difficult, but that they were not alone in it. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The days blended together as Emily and Alaric continued their journey, the road ahead still uncertain, but filled with a sense of purpose that had been absent in the world before. The group they traveled with had grown stronger, united by the belief that something greater awaited them. Alaric had begun to speak less about the past and more about the future, plans for rebuilding, for healing what had been broken. Emily had noticed the change in him, the way he moved through the world now, more sure of his steps, more confident in his place. It was as if, with each passing day, he was shedding the weight of the man who had been lost, and becoming the king he was meant to be. One evening, as they made camp near the ruins of an old bridge, Emily sat by the fire, the crackling flames casting shadows across her face. She could hear the others talking, but her thoughts were distant, lost in the quiet of the night. Her fingers traced the edge of the worn leather bracelet she had worn since childhood, a simple thing, but a reminder of the life she had left behind. She had never imagined she would be here, so far from home, standing alongside a king who had once ruled an entire kingdom. But now, she was part of something bigger, part of a story that was still being written. Alaric approached quietly, settling down beside her without a word. For a moment, they both watched the fire, the crackling embers casting fleeting light on their faces. Emily turned to him, her gaze soft. "Do you ever wonder what life would be like if none of this had happened?" she asked. Alaric was silent for a long moment, his eyes reflecting the flames. "Sometimes," he said finally, "but I don't dwell on it. The past is gone, and we can't change it. All we have is what lies ahead." His voice was steady, but there was something in the way he spoke, a hint of a deeper pain that he kept hidden. Emily studied him for a moment, the weight of his words settling in her chest. She had often wondered the same thing. What if they had never crossed paths, never set foot on this path together? What if everything had stayed the same? But then, she realized, she would have missed out on so much. She would have missed seeing this man, this king, rise again. She would have missed the chance to help him rebuild what was lost. "You're right," she said softly, the words more to herself than to him. "We can't change what's gone, but maybe we can make what comes next better." Alaric turned to her. Then, his gaze locking onto hers, and for a moment, Emily felt the full weight of the promise that hung between them. This was no longer just a journey to restore a kingdom. It was a journey to restore hope, to create something new from the ashes of the past. And she, Emily Hawke, was part of it. Together, they would face whatever came next, knowing that the road would not be easy, but that they were not alone. The fire crackled again, sending a shower of sparks into the night sky, and for the first time in a long while, Emily felt a sense of peace settle in her heart. There was still much to be done, many battles to face, but she knew they could do it, together.